G'day everyone, I am BlueBlaze, and almost a month later, with one 100% playthrough on Steam, I feel I am finally ready to discuss my final thoughts on Sonic Frontiers and the future of the series. I am sorry this review took as long as it did to come out. I've sort of just been playing the game in my own time, quite enjoying it, just sort of not really rushing through it, and hence a month later almost. Anyway. Previously on the channel, I had released 2 videos covering my thoughts around the release of the game and 1 week in. In case anyone has not seen those videos, I should be covering the majority of the topics in this review, therefore no one needs to watch them if they don't want to. And finally, as a warning, this video shall contain quite heavy spoilers, as I will be discussing the game from start to finish both in story and in gameplay. With everything out of the way, however, I'm going to jump straight into my final thoughts on the majority of Sonic Frontiers. The first topic I'm going to be covering is gameplay. Specifically how the game evolves from Sonic Forces' gameplay. When it comes to boost and controls and all that sort of thing, it feels a lot like Sonic Forces to play, however just sort of unlinear in a sense. And personally, while I would have preferred more like Generations, it's fine. It works okay. I think it's been tweaked for the better over Forces, where in Forces you just felt as slow as well, I think, and in Frontiers you do feel like you go quite fast when you're moving. However, it takes a little bit of time to get used to traversing with these controls and like this gameplay. I think it is the same in Forces, however you never really noticed it because all you're doing is boosting forward and sort of following a set path. When trying to move around using the same controls here, something feels a little bit off, and eventually you get used to it. You get used to it, it runs fine, and you're quite happy using it, that in my experience anyway. And it's something that just needs to get used to. It doesn't feel right off the start. To be honest, it doesn't really feel right all the way through. However, you get to a point where you're like, yes, I can use this, I can do this. I do anyway. Next thing, combat. Combat feels really good to use. I quite enjoyed the combat in the game. Kind of a pity there wasn't as many more things to upgrade. Or maybe just upgrades taking longer to get. Because I'm pretty sure I finished my skill tree back on the first island. Either first island, or somewhere through the second island. However, it was too quick for me personally. Which leads into fishing, because you can upgrade using stuff from fishing. I didn't personally. Actually, can you get skill points from fishing? I'm not sure. Doesn't really matter. Fishing is quite soothing to do. I personally didn't use it that much for the leveling up of anything. I preferred trying to find everything around the area until I got to the last island. I was like, okay, now that I'm on the last island and I'm going to go finish the game, I may as well just go get everything I can from B. And the last thing for gameplay is, in my opinion at least, there's too many 2D sections. More will be brought up on the stages in a second. However, in the world part of the gameplay, like just the islands as such, going anywhere, you just start, you're just moving forward, having fun traversing the island, and then all of a sudden you can get stuck in this 2D section that you have to either complete or awkwardly get out of, even if you've done it before. And I think it sort of takes you out of the game personally, and it's kind of frustrating sometimes, I think. Especially on the later islands where everything just starts to get really 2D. And I personally think a lot of them could have been done in 3D, and on earlier islands have sort of been done on 3D. There are some mechanics in the 2D parts that may only be done with 2D, however, I think they could probably rework it to make it work in 3D. That's that, however. The next thing up is stages. Mainly the first thing that sort of frustrated me when playing, and I don't want this video to be a whole a negative rant about the game. I quite enjoyed the game, in fact. However, I don't have much to talk about with what I enjoyed. the things that I enjoyed were just the fun things that the game has, that a lot of different games have, and other things that I enjoyed will probably come up later. However, yeah, I quite enjoyed the stages, I'll put that to start. However, I didn't enjoy how they kept reusing stages from the past and kept reusing the same stages in the game, actually. Especially when it comes to a lot of these assets you can tell have been pulled from another game, specifically Generations, most of them I'm pretty sure. And what's even worse in my opinion is when they rip level design straight from the other games. There are whole sections of whole stages where the level is exactly the same almost as what it would be in Generations. It plays a little bit differently with the new gameplay and all that sort of thing. However, in the most part, it feels exactly like Generations to play in those parts, and I was just running through them and I was just doing it really quickly, and yeah. Personally, my favorite setting of the stages, I guess, is the city ones, as while I think they're meant to sort of imitate like Skyscraper Scamper and City Escape, they can come off feeling a little bit more different sometimes, which is better than Green Hill feeling like Green Hill, Chemical Plant feeling like Chemical Plant, and Sky Sanctuary feeling like Sky Sanctuary. I personally, what I would have done is just made some new designs for these stages. I know that takes a lot of time and all that sort of thing, and like even keeping a lot of the stages as they are and just putting a new coat of paint on them, even if it's a blue hill zone or something, like something that's slightly nicer than seeing Green Hill Zone 7 times in the game. Yeah. Anyway, red rings in these stages are very simple to find, personally. I feel really bad now if I just said that and like some people are having difficulty finding them. However, like they're a lot more simple than previous games. That's probably how I should have worded it. Yeah, I found that like it doesn't feel like there's much of a reward to finding the red rings. The only real reason to get the red rings is to get another key, which you really don't need to complete the game. I did it for 100% reasons. However, yeah, no, I don't really understand why the red rings are as easy to find as they are, personally. Another thing, the lower paths on the stages are often the quicker path, which ruins any form of Sonic memory that I've had. That like, well, not ruins my memory, like it ruins just my instinct going into Sonic. My main thing I would do normally is go the top path, because like it's generally the fastest way. Try to find the way across the top path and keep your speed up. That's how Sonic games generally work. Except in Frontiers, where a lot of the stages, if you go the bottom way and use speed boosters and all that sort of thing, you'll go a lot faster, which is interesting. Sometimes, however, other times the speed boosters may make you slower. It is limited by what Sega allows you to do, which is interesting. And as well with that, the player's speed is limited to specifically what Sega feels for the stage, and that leads, especially later game, when your boost is really, really high up. When you get back to these stages, you just feel really slow. I feel like that's what I feel anyway. It just feels really, really slow to play them, and I kind of wish the stage speed upgraded alongside the main speed. Maybe not to as high of a degree, as that would be probably quite chaotic. However, yeah, that's... oh well. Anyway, otherwise, however, stages are quite fun. I wouldn't say they're on the level as some of the previous games, even Forces in some areas, as I still like to go back and replay Forces as levels every now and then. These ones, I don't see myself coming back as much, except for like, I think it was like 1-7 and like 4 something, 2 of the city stages anyway. I found them quite enjoyable to sort of get through. However, other than that, I don't really see myself coming back to them in the future like I do with Generations, Unleashed, sometimes with Colors. Some of the stages in Colors I like, the other ones are kind of okay, and even Forces' stages every now and then. Yeah, I don't see myself coming back to them very often. However, they are good, in my opinion. They're serviceable, quite playable. I did enjoy going through them and doing all the missions. Yeah, I do kind of wish the S ranks were more difficult, except for the second stage where it's too difficult. That's a whole nother thing. Anyway, for our next thing, animation and visuals. Basically, not really visuals in the sense of like how good the graphics look. I will briefly touch that right now, actually, just before I get into the rest of it. The graphics, they're okay. They look good enough. I think they look perfectly fine. I'm happy with them for the most part. In my opinion, it still doesn't look as good as Unleashed. Unleashed is the top tier for graphics in a Sonic game, in my opinion. Whether they couldn't do that because of the Switch or whatever reason, I don't understand. I feel like the Hedgehog engine 2, which they're using for a lot of this, can go further. And I've seen, like, you can see it especially in the stages mainly. However, you've seen it, like, even in Forces, you can see that the Hedgehog engine has some really bright spots in it. Like, different parts of some levels look amazing. However, most of the time, whether it be because of the artistic style or just not much effort put into it or time, I wouldn't say effort, a lot of effort's been put into these games. All the developers put a lot of effort into these games. However, something about it just doesn't look fully, like, amazing. Which is kind of understandable for a Sonic game. You're running past really quickly and, like, that would take a lot of time to try to get that to work properly. However, I think for the most part, it could probably look a little bit better. However, it is okay to look at, and that's another thing. Anyway, the animation overall is quite inconsistent, I've found, personally. There'll be moments where the animation looks really fluid, uses lots of squash and stretch, lots of anticipation, a lot of anticipation in some areas. Just some of the facial animations look really expressive, and then other times it is extremely stiff. And I understand for the side talking sections on the islands, yeah, they're sort of meant to look stiff. That's how they designed it to be, because it's very quick, like, interaction. Sega didn't want to put as much into that. That kind of makes sense. However, the main cutscenes, where there's a lot of animation going on, sometimes, I think I made this comparison in one of the previous videos. However, when Giganto throws Sonic through the stone pillars, the animation all leading up to that looks amazing, like really fluid, bouncy, and all that sort of thing. As soon as Sonic hits the wall, it sort of just goes down for some reason, where the spikes, or his spines don't splay across the wall. They sort of just stay there, like they're not moving, like concrete or something, and he just sort of falls to the ground without bouncing and not really, like, moving in a way that, like, not naturally moving or bouncing properly. He just sort of just bounces like a stone down the side of the cliff face and lands. It's kind of interesting. There are other things like that. The animation when he transforms into Supersonics during the boss fights, during the boss battles, yeah, that's the same. Like, it's very stiff looking, especially when he gets the emeralds. That's very stiff looking. However, then you got really good animations, like the dance he gets after doing the mission-based emeralds, and it frustrates me because sometimes it's amazing, and then other times it's such a strange stillness that it takes me out of the game, to the point where there was one cutscene where they just did it with still frames, and I don't know. That's that. I'm not sure if I should rant about it much longer. Idle animations are back. Liking them, they're nice. I'm very happy with them. Something I'm not as happy with personally is it looks like they're trying to mix elements from movie Sonic into the games. Like when Sonic with his lightning abilities now, when you get full speed on. That was never a game thing. Game Sonic never really had lightning. That was more movie Sonic thing, and I was quite happy when they showed the design of Sonic and the general gameplay of Sonic that they were keeping it apart. However, just seeing that makes me think that in the future, maybe in the next game or something like that, they're going to start putting a lot more of these electric powers onto Sonic, and that doesn't seem right to me. I'm glad a lot of the moves didn't have electric powers in them. Oh yeah, that didn't seem as right to me. Not much I can do about it. However, if that's the way Sega want to go, that's the way Sega want to go. I'm personally more of a fan that Game Sonic doesn't have those electric powers. I think it's quite unique for movie Sonic and Game Sonic being separate like that. That's my thing anyway. This next thing I'm going to be a little bit more brief on. However, the characters and voice acting. A little bit more brief specifically on the character side of things, because I'm actually thinking of making a video on it later down the line. I'll see if I do. I think it's probably a topic I can fill into a whole video, and I really want to talk about, because I've quite enjoyed the character, like, in this game. The moments the characters have together and the way they interact with each other, that is perfect. That is perfect Sonic, in my opinion. Like, Sonic is cheerful, he's happy, he goes around helping pretty much most people he can. He is very supportive. He has emotion tucked away, as anybody would. However, yeah, I think, in my opinion, that's quite good. Knuckles, even, like, not being, like, Boom Knuckles, like a lot of things seem to think he's, like, just like that a lot now. It's sort of similar to how the movie's done it, where it's like a mix of the two, and I quite like that, personally. Tails, he understands that he's wildly inconsistent from all games, which is amazing, and he's going off at the end of this game, gonna go find his own way for a little bit. And character development, that's one of the main things. Amy's character was interesting to me, because in the games, Amy's character's never really been this sort of way. This is more a Sonic Boom version of Amy, almost, in a sense. And yeah, I think it does work better than the other Amy that we've had for ages. I like the idea that Amy has evolved into this character that she's in now. There wasn't really anything to evolve her. However, I think it works really well, and I'm quite happy with how all the characters act with each other in this game. It's perfect. It's perfect, and I hope they keep doing this. Yeah, I will bring that into another video, however. Sonic and Knuckles voice actors, on the other hand, took me out of those moments all of the time. I think Amy's and Tails are okay. They work well enough for the scene. I think they still could have been directed better, personally. However, they're okay. Sonic, Roger, I don't know what he's doing in this game. I can't tell if he was told to be like this, or if he's just being like this. The way he presents the voice is wildly inconsistent throughout the game, switching from his normal Sonic voice to just him speaking, and it just doesn't sound very right, in my opinion. Yeah, I think if they're going to do this sort of thing, at least lean back into the Boom voice or something like that, because that at least worked somewhat. And Knuckles' voice, I don't even know. I personally am just not a fan of the new actor. I liked Travis Willingham from Forces. I think that one fit okay. However, that may as well be my bias from Halo, because he plays Fred from Halo. That's another thing. Anyway, I think the last thing for this, really, before I sort of move on next, is I think Amy needs somewhat of a redesign to her clothing. More similar to Boom's, in my opinion. Especially with the new character, how she acts now. Because, like, I think it doesn't look good in animation, in my opinion, and it doesn't really fit her character anymore. All the characters act as if they were slightly more grown up now, I think, and like Sonic even references how Tails seems like he grew up as quickly as he did, which is something interesting to me. I personally feel the characters are actually grown ups now. I think that's where they're sort of placing them. However, they're still not telling us their ages, because do we need to know their ages? We don't really need to know their ages. We just need to know that they're sort of older now. I think Amy sort of needs a redesign, personally. Whether that ever happens or not, I don't know. Anyway, the story of this game is probably one of my favorites thus far, specifically because of the characters and everything like that. However, I think it just works well. right before the end anyway. There's some stuff about the end. I'll get to that later. I think especially it adds in like a fair amount of lore to the game. This has like both pros and cons, I guess. Like it adds to the world, it expands the Sonic universe and all the different details, and makes fans like me who like to know everything about different games sort of happy. However, like the cons, I guess, it takes away some of the mystery, specifically the Chaos Emeralds. However, not all the mystery. We just know they come from another world where the Ancients come from. However, we don't know how they were made, if they were even in the Ancients' possessions originally, or if they come from somewhere else even. Like, there's still a lot of mystery to them. However, we do know that before they ended up on this world, they were on another world with the Chaos-like beings, known as the Ancients, and that somewhat makes me question Chaos's origins, I guess. Yeah, like, these ones, they look very similar to Chaos Zero in particular, except they don't have like the brainy part in their head. They just have a Coco in their chest, which I think is interesting. However, I think it's even referenced in the game that they look like Chaos, and they say that there was people sent off to another island, specifically to the Master Emerald, which makes me think somehow Chaos is interlinked there. My theory is that Coco's went to the Master Emerald at Angel Island, sort of evolved into Chaos. The Chao mutated into Chaos, and it still works within the timeline. However, yeah, I don't know fully what's going on. That's just my theory anyway. The Master Emerald's origins are still quite mysterious, if that puts anyone at ease as well. Like, nobody knows where that's come from. It was just there. Although, since it went into the lore, and all the Emerald's backstories, and the Master Emerald was just in it, there was no real mention of the Super Emeralds at all. And I think it's finally sort of gotten to the point where Sega's just chucked out the Super Emeralds. I don't think they're coming back. They might come back, that would be quite surprising, and I think that'd be quite enjoyable, however, yeah. But that's more for the lore part anyway. The main story, yeah, very fun. I think, very somber. Like, it's quite somber. However, I do like it. I think, especially when it comes to the character side of things, as I stated earlier, it all works together well. The story is paced okay mostly until the end, that I'll get to in a second again. Yeah, I think the way Sonic interacts with Sage, and the fact that they at least gave Sage a reason for why she can't say anything to Sonic is because Eggman hasn't permitted her to, which makes a lot of sense. Like, she's an AI, that's how it works. That sort of thing. Her going at the end is kind of understandable. However, at the same time, these islands have been shown to act like huge hard drives, basically. Therefore, I kind of gathered that she may be just stored in one anyway. That's another thing. And moving on to the ending of the game. Yeah, a lot of nitpicks here, personally. I didn't quite enjoy the ending as much as I did the rest of the game. It doesn't necessarily put a damper on the rest of the game for me. I love the rest of the game. It's not my favorite Sonic game. My favorite Sonic game is still Unleashed, probably. However, I don't know if it's second or third. I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet. It's been too soon. However, I think the way it works, the ending in this game, I wasn't much of a fan of. By what I understand, a lot of people weren't a fan of it, by what I can see online anyway. Yeah, that's just my thoughts. I think the final battle against the final Titan was too short, personally. Especially once having upgraded Sonic, you just breeze through it. The end battle against the end feels somewhat rushed. Like, they sort of just shoved it in there, and they couldn't come up with ideas for it. Like, you're fighting, you're battling a big rock in space as it shoots plasma thingies at you. That's in a completely different gameplay style that's only been used for side things in the game. Well, not really side things, because you have to use them to get through the story. However, it's only used for different little things in the game, not a boss battle. Anyway, the like the race that took down the ancients, I'm hoping they can be expanded on in the future. I'll probably get back to that in a second. Specifically, I'm kind of hoping, as a fan, probably won't happen. It'd be interesting if they brought the Meta X in from Sonic X. I think that would be pretty neat. That's them being the big bad guys that took down the ancients, and maybe the end is one of them in a way somehow, even though it's a big rock. Confusing. Either. Yeah, I think that'd be pretty neat. Speaking of the future, I guess this is the obligatory part where I speak about the future of the series. I would like to see them expand on this style of gameplay and this style of game. Yeah, I think it did really well. I think personally this is the next step. It does need tweaks, however, especially in like the controls and everything like that. It does sort of all need tweaks. Everything just sort of needs tweaks. That could be said for the entire game. Especially, I think the islands, while good for this game, fits this game really well. I think a more cartoony open world, not necessarily Green Hill. I guess that's probably what everyone flashes to, or I just flash to when I say cartoony Sonic. However, just like some more fun, vibrant levels to run around in that make it feel like yeah, it's just like a platformer for Sonic. However, like I understand that you can have like gritty levels in Sonic as well, but it's been that way for ages, especially in some of my favorite Sonic games. Like, I do like those levels. However, I think it would just be really interesting to see what a full open world cartoony style Sonic game would look like. That's something that I think would be neat to see. On the inverse topic of that, however, I would like them to keep the more somber tone of the story, or at least the more serious tone, with still some nice lines on either end, because I think it just works better, personally, when they're doing this full big stories, like the full big grand stories for Sonic games. They've sort of dug themselves into a hole way back in like 1999, 1998 or whenever it was, that they need to keep these stories up. They can't sort of just... I think it works now, anyway. And I like this story for this game, and I think it could be expanded on. I personally think there will probably end up being a trilogy of games that explain sort of what's happened that started with this game. That's just my thing. And then the next thing they do for the next game, and my final thing in this video, before I get to my final thoughts, they need to fix up the voice acting, please. Please and thank you. And maybe the animations as well. I would quite appreciate that personally. Yeah. Anyway. Overall, I feel the game, whilst a little rough around the edges in almost every area, has many good and even great qualities that shine through brighter than those rough edges will allow. The direction they can take this style could leave the future quite interesting, and I'm hoping they stick to it and expand on it to get it to a perfect point. However, for now, I believe that is all from me. I hope everyone enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching, and I shall be back in the next one. Cheers, everyone!